Clive, welcome to the Skew Space podcast.
Thank you very much, Nick. It's great to be here.
Perfect. So, what we will be discussing today is why organisations shouldn't ignore cybersecurity insurance. But before we get into it, Clive, are you okay just to let the audience know a little bit about your background, if that's okay?
Absolutely, yeah. So, as I said, great to be here. Thanks for having me. So, Clive Cully, I'm an Associate Director for the Grant Thornton Cyber Defence Centre, where I lead business development activities for the cyber insurance and legal channel. I've been in technology and services and consulting services for probably about 25 years, kind of shows my age, I think, but in senior management positions at global IT firms, many of which I probably don't need to go into, but companies that are both cybersecurity and pure play consultancy businesses in the IT sector. Spent 9 years in the Middle East as well, so working in countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, which was very interesting and an interesting part of my career. And the past five years, I've focused more on cybersecurity, right, specifically in that space, and that's really been around helping organisations achieve some of their security objectives, helping manage risk, helping them reduce risk, and in respond to cybersecurity incidents, which kind of plays into, I guess, this conversation as well. But in my current role, sort of bringing it right up to date, I really build, manage and maintain relationships with global cyber insurance carriers and breach counsel firms, where we collaborate closely from an incident response perspective and threat intelligence perspective, collaborating closely with assisting in investigating, recovering and containing cyber incidents. So helping organisations, I guess, work through what is typically a very challenging situation for them.
Absolutely. So I suppose to delve straight in on this one and just to throw you in on the deep end more than anything, Clive, is I suppose cyber insurance could be quite a new term to a lot of people that is listening to this.
Could be, indeed.
Is it a new term? How long has cyber insurance been around for?
It's been around for many years.
All right, okay.
Right, yeah. Probably a decade, maybe even longer. And if you probably ask some of the cyber insurance experts in the market, they'll probably give you a very specific answer. But yeah, it's been around for a long time, and I think the recent uptick in cyber insurance probably over the last 4 or 5 years, certainly probably just prior to COVID, when the likes of ransomware was very high and prevalent and many attacks were taking place. I think the cyber insurance market has really grown from that point.
Absolutely. So tell me, what exactly is cyber insurance then?
Sure, absolutely. So look, every business has some level of risk attached to it, right? A higher risk, you could argue, the higher the need for the likes of cyber insurance. Right? And it is all about risk. And if you think about it, companies hold such sensitive data these days. Well, they have probably pretty much all of the time. Whether they realised it or not is another question. But whether that be PII, whether it be financial data, whether it be healthcare information and records, this is all sensitive data, and that brings high risk, right? Because there is a risk of that data potentially being exposed, and exfiltrated and stolen, and it could result in things like identity theft, fraud, compliance violation, and challenges from that perspective. So really protecting that data is key. Right, for any organisation, large, small, medium, whatever business you're in, protecting your data is absolutely key. Now, given the increase and intensity and frequency, I guess, of cyber threats globally now, the need for cyber insurance or having cyber insurance can absolutely bolster an organisation's defence and recovery capabilities. Right? Because you think about the risk, you think about the potential, the impact of that data being stolen and put in the hands of people that you don't want it in the hands to. Having cyber insurance can help organisations, as I say, bolster and defence and recovery capabilities. Now, I've worked with many cyber insurers over the years, and to be honest, Nick, I can't see any reason why businesses wouldn't take out cyber insurance, right? I can understand some of the arguments against it, but most businesses have some form of general liability insurance anyway, right, as a company. So whether that be around property damage, whether it be about legal costs, workers' compensation, they all have some form of insurance as a business, right? So protecting them from everyday risks. Now, cybersecurity threats are one of the biggest risks to any organisation today. Right? That's the reality. So partnering with a cyber insurance carrier and a cyber insurance firm and provider will ensure that you have that financial safety net, that coverage in the event of a breach. Right? And that coverage is in essence cost reimbursement. Right. So that's really what it is, and it gives that organisation access to the right ecosystem to support the organisation in the event of a crisis. Okay. So that's what it's providing.
Okay.
So if you think about it, if you think about the C-suite or leaders in an organisation, they all have insurance. Why are they not thinking about cyber?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I suppose, looking at it from this standpoint, we are now in the digital age. We've had, with Ford, we've had the manufacturing explosion. We are now in this age of digital and cybersecurity, AI, whichever spin you want to put on it.
Sure.
So why are companies not looking at this and be like, okay, we're in this age now, we're accepting this age. Why is cyber insurance still? We know of it, absolutely, because we're in the ecosystem. But I think people from the outside be like, okay, why do I need insurance on something that's digital? Like, people think, I need car insurance, house insurance, because it's physical. But what do I need? Well, and I suppose the answer to that is that information now is key. Information is it is a data set. It is a resource that can be used for good and for bad.
Absolutely.
And like you say, ransomware, what you touched on earlier in cyber instance, comes with a hefty price tag, doesn't it? It does ransomware. So, well, before going any further, do you agree there with what I'm sort of saying?
I do. And the impact to an organisation when they've been hit by these sorts of cyber attacks, the financial impact could be huge. Right, and depending on the type of size of organisation you are, in many cases it will cripple the company, right? And the company will be on its knees. In those types of situations. So, if you think about what cyber insurance how it can support an organisation, that's what we need to be thinking about. And leaders should be thinking about this as a business problem. A business challenge, not an IT challenge. And it's if you look at risk assessing any organisation, cybersecurity absolutely needs to be part of that.
Let's just do a hypothetical situation, Clive. And I'm the CEO of an organisation. And I say to you, Clive, my organisation has never been breached before. I don't think it will get breached again. So why should I lump out a lot of money on security that doesn't return me an investment? Why should I do it?
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to protecting your digital assets, right? What are I can use the term crown jewels. Right? What's the crown jewels of your business? And how are you protecting that? Who has access to that data? Who has eyes on it? Who maintains it? Who manages it? And what would the impact of that be if it was stolen? If that data was exfiltrated out of your business and put into the hands and sold on the dark web or wherever it is on the internet by threat actors, what is the impact that could have to your organisation? And the reality is there are, and it's not just a security impact. There are many things that come with it. You think about organisations that are highly regulated, the potential fines and legal fees that they might have to potentially deal with, the business interruption losses, right? Dealing with the threat actor. How do you do that? Right. So there's all these things that come into play: extortion costs, ransom costs. These are all things that potentially the company would have to pay those costs out of pocket. Right. So if you're in that situation, you find yourself in that situation, and your costs are stacking up, because you don't have the help that you need.
Yep.
And you're kind of doing it on the fly, if you will.
Yep.
In other words, you're not prepared.
Yep.
Right? It's a massive financial burden.
Yep.
You're huge. Right? And it's not just about dealing with the IT or security or a technical element of it, of that response. It's all of the other things that come with it, like I just mentioned.
Yep. Absolutely. No, some really good points there. So, why should a company, again, looking at all these emerging threats, as I mentioned earlier on, there are a lot of new things coming out. AI being one of them. AI can obviously be used for good. It can also be used for bad as well. So, with that being said, attacks are getting a lot more sophisticated. As well as innovation, attacks are also growing alongside it as well. So surely that is enough in itself to imply to organisations like, okay, with all this innovation, there's obviously a cost to it. As with anything in life, that if there's nothing's too good to be true, and there's always negative connotations around the corner. Do you see in your role that organisations are becoming more welcoming of cyber insurance, or is there still sort of a naivety around this topic?
I think it's the latter.
I
still think sometimes there is. I think organisations understand more about what it is.
Yes.
Potentially how, or the benefits of having cyber insurance. But there are a few things that really come into play here, and cost is one of them.
Yes.
Right? If you think about SME organisations, those types of organisations that sit within that bracket, there's more of a challenge for them.
Yes.
Right, because they're perhaps less mature in their cybersecurity hygiene.
Yep.
And less focused perhaps on that, and they can't afford cyber insurance. So I think what the cyber insurance market are doing are really working more with SME organisations and helping them understand the products, insurance products that would help an SME business, as opposed to a large global enterprise, right? That is a lot more mature, and has the budget as well to take out global cyber insurance policies.
Yep.
So it's kind of addressing different markets, if you will. Yeah. And it's important that I think the cyber insurance community make sure that they do that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just trying to think, obviously, again, going back to the culture around security. Firstly, security in itself, and correct me if I'm wrong and put me back in a place, but I'm just giving a high-level overview of what I think it is. I think that we are in a better place as an industry as what we were 5, even 10 years ago, in terms of, okay, security is its own subsector of IT, and as such, it deserves its own sort of budget, it deserves its own allocation, its resource. However, I still think in boardrooms up and down the country and globally, that it's still not seen as a priority. I still think it's seen as a little bit of an afterthought, a little bit of a tick boxing exercise, in the sense of like, oh yeah, we have a security team, I should be bulletproof, and it's just not the case. So with that being said, cyber insurance is like another thing on top, where it's like, well, I've got a security team, why do I also need cyber insurance?
Yeah, sure.
What would you say to those people who have that mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. I think where organisations have has a security function, large or small, and they have technology that is protecting their business, whether that be MFA, whether it be endpoint security, whether they have incident response plans in place, and they have the right people, practices and technology in place. To your point, why would they then think about cyber insurance? Well, I've invested X million in people, in technology. I don't need that. I don't need to have a cyber insurance policy in place. And I think many organisations still have that attitude, right? And I can understand it. Right, and a lot of organisations, I think, still think, well, you know what, I'm going to invest here. I'm not going to invest in cyber insurance. I think it's a waste of time or waste of money, or, you know, I could use my budget on improving technology, on hiring another person, or whatever that might be.
Yep.
Right. And I completely get that. But the point that they need to be looking at is making sure that in the event of, because no one, there's no silver bullet, right?
Yes.
No one organization is safe from threats, and whatever threat that is, right? No one organization is safe. So in the event of a breach, how would I recuperate my financial loss? Mm-hmm. Right? And that's what cyber insurance will provide.
Yep.
Right? So great. Technology, people, all of that is in place. All of that's good. It potentially reduces the risk, but doesn't remove it.
Yes.
Right? And I think it's, you know, we've probably all heard this before. It's not a case of if, but when that happens, then if there is a significant amount of financial loss, and I need to pay for that as a business, how am I reimbursed?
Yes.
And that's what cyber insurance provides.
Yes.
Right? So it's not just about great having all of that in place. It's about understanding the risk and understanding how you would be reimbursed.
Yes.
Right? So having a cyber insurer that is fit for purpose and matches what your organisation is trying to achieve, whether you're on a specific vertical sector and there's a cyber insurer that specialises in that space, your organisation should be looking at that, right? And looking at the market and finding out which cyber insurer is a good fit for them, because there are many.
How do you quantify an insurance policy in cybersecurity? Like, obviously, I understand it's got to come down to risk, right? And it's got to be like, obviously, it's not going to be car insurance, which can range between, I don't know, 300 quid to 1,000 a year. It's not going to be that, is it? So how do you actually quantify that in line with your security risk?
I think, so when organisations are looking at cyber insurers, there was, you know, probably going back a few years now, if you talk to the market, it was, well, I really don't want to be filling out a 200, you know, question. I did, you know, these pages and pages of questions just to get a cyber insurance policy. I think cyber insurers have woken up to that and listened to the market and trying to make it a bit more streamlined, a bit more efficient, and to make it easier to get cyber insurance. But there are always going to be prerequisites.
Yes,
I think certainly the cyber insurers are looking at organisations, and if they're not really meeting the basic cybersecurity standards, right, quite rightly, the insurer is going to demand that they, you know, have those security controls in place.
Yes.
Right, and that's just not because they're being annoying. It's the company needs to protect themselves. So, like I mentioned, endpoint protection, MFA, incident response planning, playbooks, all of those things, having those in place before providing that coverage.
Yep.
Right, and that ensures that the policy itself and who they're insuring is correct for them, right? And it's a good match because it goes back to your point about risk.
Yep.
Right. So why insure an organisation that has no cyber policies in place?
Yep.
That has no idea what they're going to do in terms of an incident response. And, you know, the firm could say, well, yeah, but that's what I've got cyber insurance for.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So there is, you hear that argument. I've got cyber insurance. I don't need to worry about any of that stuff because that's just going to fix it. It's not just about that. All of these things need to come together. Right. So taking cybersecurity seriously in your organisation as a business problem.
Yep.
Right. Putting all of the things in place. In other words, being prepared. Preparedness and readiness is absolutely key. Right. And having a cyber insurance policy to support you as well. You know, bringing all those things together, technology, people, insurance, that whole ecosystem, bringing that together is really the direction.
Yep.
There's been a lot of feedback as well that I hear about cyber insurance is too expensive. It's very difficult to get. But like I said, I think insurers are streamlining that and trying to be a bit more efficient on how they insure people to make it easier for organisations to get cyber insurance. Going back to about the SME market, right, which is a bit more challenging for them. They're smaller, it's more challenging. They've got tighter budgets.
Yep.
They're not this global enterprise ship that can pay for high premiums. So with those types of organisations, I think the insurance market is really helping them and supporting them, right? But again, there's no silver bullet. It's bringing it all together.
Absolutely, and I suppose just a couple points I want to make on that is. On a lot of these podcasts, what I've discussed is a little bit of, I'll say it's sort of like maybe the education sectors, in some areas the retail sector, they're often seen as the low-hanging fruit, and it is a little bit of like, well, how can we help these sectors, these certain companies actually not become the low-hanging fruit? And I suppose something like cyber insurance will help with this. And another point that you made that I just want to touch on is, and further echo it, is the fact that insurance is there to complement existing security teams, existing security tech stacks. It's not, and as well as, it's not a, we're trying to cut corners here, it's one or the other. Yeah. It is to complement it. As internally, when a CEO speaks to the CISO and it's like, okay, this is your budget for the year, this is what I'm allocating you. And, CISOs don't look to, build everything in-house. Some might do, but most adopt a build-buy methodology. It's like, okay, what can I build in-house and what do I need to go to dedicated specialist vendors or technology products that will help me assist, and combining the two is what will give us the desired outcome, which is for us to be as secure as possible. All that we're doing now is complementing it with cyber insurance to, like you say, open it up to kind of like a trinity now of secure ways, and that's the security mindset that we need to take. It is like, how can our organisation be as secure as possible? So as well as, rather than cutting corners, because if you cut corners, you're going to get found out. Because to finish off on the point, no company is absolutely bulletproof when it comes to breaches, and so many times it happens where a company, like, by the time they've breached, it's too late. You've been hit with a huge bill.
Absolutely, yeah, indeed. And I think trying to use it as a tick box exercise is the wrong approach as well. So it's, it really is about the business taking that seriously.
Absolutely.
And to the point I made earlier about risk and data, really understanding what needs to be protected and how it's protected.
Yep, absolutely. So, talk to me about the incident then. So, I'm loving being the CEO today in this hypothetical situation. My company has now been breached. I'm coming back to you with a little bit my hands open, and I'm a little bit I'm a little bit sorry. But luckily, you did persuade me to get cyber insurance. Now,
it was the right thing to do.
It was the right thing to do. So tell me, I've just been breached. What happens?
Sure. Well, the first 24 to 72 hours following that breach are crucial. Right? It really is crucial. Fortunately, you did have cyber insurance, right?
Yes.
So that cyber insurer will then help ensure that you have access to the ecosystem of support that you need quickly and fast. The last thing you want to be doing, and if you didn't have cyber insurance, and I'm glad I persuaded you to have cyber insurance, Mr. CEO, if you didn't have, probably what you'd end up be doing is being on a call while you've just had a cyber incident, wondering what the hell is going on, why you found this ransom note, or why your business email has been compromised, and why your data has been stolen from your organization. You find yourself in a position where you're negotiating fees with an incident response provider or a law firm or a crisis comms organization to help you, right?
Yep.
But guess what? With cyber insurance, you've got access to all of those people already.
Yes.
Right. So they're typically what we would call on panel.
Yes.
And they're on panel providers. The Grant Thornton Cyber Defence Centre is one, as there are many, to provide incident response and forensics investigation and containment and recovery type services.
Yes.
Typically, the insurer would have access on panel with breach counsel firms, providing that legal support, crisis comms, PR, incident responders, right? And they can mobilise them very quickly as part of that insurance policy. bring them to the table to work with you and your team to make sure that the incident is contained quickly.
Yep.
Your systems are recovered as fast as possible, and it's investigated.
Yep.
Right, and all of the costs that come with that. Your cyber insurer would work with you to ensure that any of those other costs that might be impacting your organisation, such as business interruption costs, your operations are down, and potential costs around that. That they can potentially be reimbursed depending on the type of policy that you have.
Yep.
But that's really the value of organisations being closely partnered.
Yes.
with a cyber insurer, bringing that all together and make sure that incident, or the life cycle of the incident, as I call it, is managed closely.
Yep.
Right, and we're working with you to achieve that. You see a lot of organisations, perhaps, where they've gone into this situation and they're scrabbling around and they're saying, well, you know what, I've got my own security team, I've got my IT people, they can manage it. I think the reality is burnout happens very quickly because it's an intense period.
Yep.
Right? Organisations need help. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think it's important that they understand that, they appreciate it, and be honest.
Yep.
Right. Yes, I've got a team. Yes, we're fairly mature in the way we work, but external help and independent support that isn't going to judge in any way. Mm-hmm. Almost be a bit of an emotional support as an incident response practice, right? For the C-suite or whomever it is to pick up the phone and say, look, where do we go from here? What is this? Who is this threat actor? How do they operate? How do they work? Why are they attacking our organisation? It's just providing that C-suite support. Yep. And doing that as an independent provider through your insurer, your breach counsel, or incident response firm, that really helps. That's the reality. It will help you in that time of crisis.
Absolutely, and that latter bit is often overlooked.
It is
absolutely overlooked. It's a little bit of hush in the instant response world, and burnout is so key. But it is starting to get a little bit more light, so it's good to know that obviously the UK cyber defence arm of Grant Thornton, have that approach to it.
Absolutely.
I wanted to bring in a little bit of the chat about regulations and how this has impacted your world as well. And obviously, as we know, there's new regulations coming in where incidents now have to be reported to the ICO. And is that making your world, I want to say easier, but it might be the wrong word that I'm using there, but because companies no longer have to, are hiding it for such reasons as brand reputation or whatever it might be, does that help your world or does it hinder your world? This new regulation.
I mean, I fully support it. I think it's essential. I don't think it hinders, and I don't think it supports either. I think it's just one of those things that needs to be done.
Yes,
and it's a very important part of what happens post-incident.
Yes.
Right? And having the right legal advice.
Yes.
And breach counsel, if you will, guiding you and supporting you through that process.
Yes.
That will make it a lot easier for everybody. Right? Because they know that world. That's what they do. They can guide you on all aspects of regulatory and how that impacts, a healthcare organisation or a services provider or a financial business. Right?
Yeah.
That's their space, they know, and they can guide you through that and where you are provided if you're a highly regulated business. And there are potential fines associated to something like this, to a cyber breach.
Yes.
Then they can guide you through that quite, I wouldn't say easily is probably the wrong word, efficiently. To make sure that you've got the right support and you're thinking about it right from the beginning, because the last thing, of course, any CEO or C-suite wants is some kind of regulatory fine.
Yes.
Or making the mistake of not reporting it, right? And therefore incurring another fine because they're not doing that. So having the right legal support around you will absolutely help.
And I think that segues perfectly to, do you think that cyber insurance should be made mandatory towards companies in the UK?
That's a really interesting question, and it I have to think about carefully what I say here, right? I think yes,
okay,
but it's complex,
okay,
right? And the reason I say that, I think, in my opinion, it should be mandated for certain markets. Perhaps when we look at high risk sectors,
yep,
and that would be healthcare, for example, right? Finance or critical infrastructure. Yes, it should probably be mandated, and then really encouraged for other sectors, right? Because not everybody can afford it.
Yep.
There comes an affordability challenge there, but mandating it, I think, would be hard on SME organisations.
Yes,
That would be tough on them. To my point, there becomes potentially an affordability issue that comes into that, and perhaps UK government or governments around the world should be looking at incentivising businesses if they hold cyber insurance. Some kind of, I don't know, some kind of tax break maybe, I don't know, or some compliance benefits if they've got cyber insurance in place that will help them through the darkest day, right? Some kind of government-backed cyber insurance scheme maybe,
yep,
right? And it's just promoting it, driving the right thinking and culture around it, and making sure as well that organisations are just looking at cyber risk in general,
yep,
and how to reduce their risk at the source,
yep,
right? Through perhaps mandatory, things like endpoint protection,
yep,
or MFA, or other controls that will help reduce that risk,
yep,
and potentially deter the threat actor from getting into your business. So I think it should be mandated, but I think it should be mandated with caution.
yes,
And perhaps in certain sectors.
yes.
So it's something that perhaps the government are looking at it already, but I firmly believe that it's something that should be looked at closely.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think with this new legislation coming in play, it's kind of like a little bit of hop, skip, and a jump. It's like, I think this will kind of test the waters of it. It sounds ludicrous to hear, like the fact that we're trying to help everybody when an incident occurs. So just tell us, and we're all in the same boat. Is what the ICO is trying to get across.
Sure.
But obviously, it's all about how does security fit into a lot of business strategies, and it's like, okay, well, for a retail, for an education company, whatever it might be, security might not be number one, so therefore having to report a security risk could have catastrophic implications to the operations of said business. I understand the reason why. I suppose my last question to you, Clive, more than anything, is now that we've discussed everything that we've discussed, why shouldn't companies ignore cyber insurance from here on out?
Yeah, I think if you find the right cyber insurance policy and the right cyber insurance partner that is fit for purpose for your business, and it works for you, then the reality is it will and could save you significant amount of money and avoid the risk of massive financial losses.
Yes.
From data breaches, right? That's the reality. Ransomware demands, business interruption, and some of these other things that we talked about. I think we'd all agree, and I mentioned it already. It's not a case of if, but when a company gets hit with a cyber attack. So having the right policy and cyber insurance in place will ultimately help your business long term and help you reduce risk. And I think organisations need to have a bit of a rethink and understand what the reality is, and make sure that they absolutely understand what the impact is and the risk of not being prepared.
Yep.
Whether that's a cyber insurance policy, or whether it's having the technology and people and controls in place. All right, and understanding what they would need to do in the event of a data breach, in the event of in the event of attack. How would they respond, as opposed to saying, well, I'll just leave the experts to figure it out. How would they do it? Have they understood that the importance of an incident response plan? Have they tested it? Right? Have they done things like simulation exercises? We use the term a lot, tabletop exercises. Yes. You're probably aware of that term. So, are they actually doing that, as opposed to just thinking about, well, yeah, we'll cross that bridge. I've got a team, I've got technology. Yeah, I've got a cyber breach policy. That bridge is great, but you know what? Test it.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Clive, for coming on the SkeWSpace podcast today.
Very welcome.
If anybody has any questions for Clive, anything that was raised today, or would just like to learn more about obviously the UK cyber defence arm of Grant Thornton and what they do in the cyber insurance space, then I'll be sure to put all Clive's information down below. But Clive, once again, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.